discuss it. So yesterday, basically, what we have discussed is we have discussed what exactly or where exactly our Oracle SOA suite lie in the Oracle Fusion hierarchy. Okay, within the Oracle Fusion hierarchy, we have got Oracle Fusion applications, Oracle Fusion middleware. Within Oracle Fusion middleware, we have got Oracle SOA suite, and your Oracle SOA suite leverages this SOA architecture. Okay, and the SOA architecture basically relies on two things, which are services and messages. The services are nothing but some business functionality, and this SOA is implemented with the help of concept of web services. And what exactly is web service? Web service is as good as a software function provided at network address over the web. And can anybody tell me there is a file corresponding to each web service we get? What is that file? Okay, Vipul says visual file, which is absolutely correct. Okay, so there is a file corresponding to each web service which gives the description of the service. We get to know what kind of task a web service can do. We can get to know, like, what is the request and the response format required. We get to know where is the service available, what is the location of the service. And then we try to understand, this how SOA, made the architecture solutions better. So yeah, when the SOA was not there in place, we used to have point-to-point integrations, because of which, the architecture was not flexible, it was not agile, and because of which what used to happen is, if there used to be a problem in one system, other systems also used to get impacted. Now, and the number of connections were more over there. It was like a mesh of wires. But when this SOA was introduced, it acts as a middleware layer where each system needs to interact with SOA. SOA would have all the mechanisms to do the necessary transformations, to do the routing, to do the logic building, and that will make different systems to talk to each other. I also told, like, SOA, within SOA, we have got a component called as people. Did we talk about that? I don't think we have talked about that. Okay, we didn't talk about that in yesterday's session. So we basically talked that there are two types of operations, synchronous operations and the asynchronous operation. So now we'll get started with today's session. So actually I was supposed to talk about the SOA architecture. So before I start talking about the SOA architecture, what happens is, let's understand. I told you two things. Okay, yesterday I told you one thing, that a service which is projected to you might not be the ultimate service which is doing the complete task. Okay, there might be a lot of services which are running at the back end which actually does the task, but the end user might not know about all those services at all. For example, I gave you an example. When you go to the Flipkart portal, okay, you try to make online purchase, you might feel that the online Flipkart portal is the ultimate service provider, but that's not the case. In the back end, they're utilizing the web services of Paytm. Paytm might be utilizing the web services of bank. So these all services are required to be combined together into a single unit, and that single unit is projected to the outer world. And the process of the process of combining discrete set of services into single single unit is called as orchestration. Okay, the process of combining discrete set of services into single unit is called as orchestration, and this task in Oracle SOA suite is done by people. Okay, people stands for business process execution language. Okay, this stands for business process execution language, which is basically a XML based language. So this is as good as your XML language. When you see the code of people, it would be as good as a XML language. Okay, so we will have some XML tags which we use to write people. So people has got lot of inbuilt constructs. It has a lot of inbuilt constructs which allows to do the logic building. Okay, so when I say inbuilt constructs, what does that mean is, For example, we talk about any language, let's say C is a language or Java language. So we have a lot of inbuilt constructs such as if, while, for, switch. So these basically helps to do the manipulations more effectively, right? There are a lot of inbuilt constructs which helps to do the manipulations effectively. So people is one of the component under Oracle SOA suite using which we can do the logic building. And apart from doing the logic building, the main task what we do is we combine the set of services into single unit and we expose it as a single service to the outer world. And if we have to do the logic building within the people, how is it done? It is done with the help of a lot of inbuilt constructs. We'll be talking about those constructs in future sessions, but whenever you talk about the people, you might come across terminology orchestration very frequently. Okay, this is the terminology which goes hand in hand whenever you come across the terminology people, you would definitely see this terminology orchestration. So you can say the process of combining discrete set of services into single unit is called as orchestration. And why they have specifically taken the word orchestration, the reason being this orchestration word comes from orchestra. Okay, what happens in an orchestra is there is a music director with bunch of musicians coming from different backgrounds playing different instruments. Now this bunch of musicians which gather together might not know each other. So there, let's say there are tabla players, there are guitar players, there are sitar players. These different musicians might not know each other, but these all people know one person, that is your musician. So musician give different signals which are interpreted by these musicians and they perform accordingly. By seeing the signals of the musician, they do understand which instrument has to be played. They do understand what should be the pitch of the sound which is created. So the point over here is the music director is a central coordinator who coordinates among different musicians and makes them to work in a flow so that he can create the desired tune or desired impact. On a very similar note, when we combine this discrete set of services into single unit, for example, calculator is a web service which is exposed, which internally is reliable on some discrete services such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, then these multiple services might not know each other. There is no need for these discrete services to know each other. Only it is people who must know all these services, who must know when to call which service. So it is, these all decisions are taken by people, and people is called as the central coordinator. People is also called as the central coordinator. Whichever services are required to be combined together, that is taken care by people, but this discrete set of services which are being combined may not know each other at all. So people has got the task of doing the orchestration, where when we say orchestration, it would mean that we are combining discrete set of services into single unit. So if you guys remember, yesterday I have given an example of wedding planner. So he internally might be relying on the services of many other sub vendors who are in touch with him, but as an end user he will never share the details of those vendors, right? He will say I am the service provider, which might not be the case. Okay, but it's all about what we are projecting. We are abstracting the actual services from the outer world, and we are actually creating one more service which an outer world sees. And to do all this, we would need people. People is the component which basically helps in achieving these kind of use cases. Any doubts so far? Okay, now when we talk about this people, see why this Oracle SOA suite is capable of connecting within Oracle Fusion applications as well as third-party applications. The reason being, this is based on standards. Okay, so what happens is there are like different IT communities where people come from different IT companies. Okay, they build some standards which runs across the IT community. Okay, which are followed across the companies. Okay, so when we build something which has to act as a middleware solution, should ideally be always running on such factors, or should be including those standards which are generic across the IT industry. So similarly, this Oracle SOA suite is built on different standards So Beeple is also one standard. You know, Beeple is a standard given by IBM. It is a standard given by IBM, but it it is considered to be a standard which is followed across the industry. So it's nothing like, since it is given by IBM, IBM can only use it. Oracle leverages it to build Oracle SOA suite. So similarly, we have like XSLT, which is also once again one more standard. We'll talk about that in maybe future sessions. So that's how this Beeple, since it is built on standard, it is competent enough to integrate with different applications. Those applications might belong to SOA, or sorry, might belong to Oracle. Those applications might belong to IBM. Okay, so these all applications can be integrated together with the help of Oracle SOA suite. In the process of doing this integration, we have to make sure the different systems which are required to be integrated can be projected as a web service. Okay, we until and unless we project the systems as a web service, we cannot do the integration, because the baseline of your SOA is services and messages. Messages are the data which is exchanged among the services, and your services are nothing but web service components. Okay, so definitely you have to make sure that each system which you're trying to integrate using Oracle SOA suite should project itself as a web service. Okay, so for the some of the systems, there is an out-of-box functionality which allows themselves to project as a web service, and for some other enterprise information systems which are non-service oriented, ideally within Oracle SOA suite we have got something called as adapter framework. We have got adapter framework. So what happens is, see, there might not be a possibility for each system to project itself as a web service. So what has happened is, in the Oracle SOA suite, they've introduced one framework called as adapter framework, which is basically built on Java. Okay, this adapter framework allows to expose non-service oriented systems also to expose themselves as service oriented systems. The reason being, SOA cannot work with anything which is non-service oriented. So everything has to be converted into service oriented manner. So there are a lot of systems which can project, which has got out of the box functionality to project themselves as a web service. If at all that is not available, if at all that is not possible, then we have got adapter framework which allows us to do that. We'll talk about adapter framework a lot more, but for the time being, you can understand it exposes non-service oriented enterprise information systems. It exposes non-service oriented enterprise information systems as service oriented enterprise information systems. Okay, for example, we have got n number of adapters. We have got DB adapter, we have got file adapter.
Hello.
Yeah, please tell me.
Hello.
Yeah, please tell me. Somebody was speaking. May I know who was that? Who was just speaking some time back? If there are any issues, you can type in the chat box, because I can't hear anybody speaking now. Guys, are you following me? Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, it's clear to me.
Okay, fine. So what I was talking is, there are a lot of adapters which basically helps to expose non-service oriented systems as service oriented system. For example, let's say I want to do the select operation on a table. That select operation itself can be exposed as the operation of a web service, because your Oracle SOA suite has got the tendency to only communicate with those systems which can project themselves as web services. So with some systems, this functionality might be available out of the box. If it is not there, Oracle SOA suite has introduced an adapter framework which allows to do certain configurations such that the non-service oriented system can be also exposed itself as service oriented. And we have got different adapters under this framework we have got DB adapter, we have got file adapter, we have got JMS adapter, we have got AQ adapter, we have got FTP adapter, okay, and so on. So we'll be talking a lot more about all this. So as of now, at this point, I just want you to have an idea what is adapter framework, what is people, if not much, if not in much detail, at least in high level idea that there is something called as people which exists in Oracle SOA Suite. There is something called as adapter framework which exists in Oracle SOA Suite. Now talking about the SOA architecture. Okay, so SOA basically has client server architecture. Okay, it is more or less like a client server architecture. So when we talk about the client server architecture, what happens is the resource is available at the server level. Okay, there is a request which goes from the client, which is processed at the server level, and the response is sent back to the client. For example, you want to access some web portal, so your web browser is the client which generates the request for the resource that goes to the server where your particular portal is available. So your request is processed and then you get back the response. That's how it happens. So in the SOA architecture, we have got service consumer. Okay, so we have got service consumer, we have got service provider. These two parties will be always available in the SOA architecture. Now, these two parties basically constitutes the SOA architecture. There might be one more party called as central repository, which may be also called as registry, which may be also called as discovery agencies. Okay, there are different names given to this third component within the SOA architecture. Now what happens is your architecture varies depending on the project you are working, depending on the kind of companies you are working with. So in the industry we know, like, we have service based companies like Infosys, TCS, uh, Accenture, Capgemini. Okay, and we have got product based companies like Google. Okay, so there are product based companies which comes up with a which considers a common problem statement prevailing in the industry, and they come up with a solution. They do not know who will be subscribing to their solution. They do not know how many number of people are ready to buy their product, but they come up with something which is meeting the most of the problem statements coming up from the customers or coming from the end users, and they come up with some solution. Okay, service-based companies are, again, I hope you understand the difference between the service-based companies and the product-based companies. Now what happens is, this Oracle SOA is used for integration, or we can say SOA itself is a solution which makes two or more systems to talk to each other. That's right. So we have got service consumer, we have got service provider. These two parties will be always there. So let's talk about a scenario, okay, where we are working in a product-based company. Okay, so now let's say there are a lot of people who develop apps these days. Okay, so this is an era of apps. Okay, we use mobile technologies to build those apps. So now let's say I am a company, okay, XYZ company, who is building an app. So ideally, as per your knowledge, what is the cycle which is followed? Let's say somebody developed an app and that is a generic app. For example, there is an app to do the currency conversion. Okay, there is an app which is capable of doing the currency conversion. Now that was a common problem statement. There came a company, okay, who took the initiative to develop or to basically solve this problem by developing this app. Now what is the next step which is followed by the company? Let's say they are done with the development part, they find the app is working absolutely fine. Then what is the next step which is followed? Anybody has an idea? They advertise, absolutely. So what do ideally they do is, see, there are two advertisements we might talk about. I'll talk about the advertisement which they do by publishing their app into the Play Store or App Store. So what we do is, from where do we download the apps? From where do we access the apps? We go to the Play Store and we access those, right? So each service provider, okay, those people who are developing the app individually, they may not know who are the consumers. Okay, so for example, if I say I develop an app and I roam in the streets, please buy my app, please buy my app. Okay, I might need to spend a lot of money. I might need to like hire a lot of executives. I might need to have a very big sales team who advertises for it. But instead of doing that, what I do is I publish those apps into certain central repository which can be accessed by n number of the people, which is a standard mechanism of accessing those apps. On a very similar note, when we develop some services which provides a common solutions, which provides a generic solutions, okay, so which are developed by the product based companies where we do not know who actually would be the service consumer, then in that case we develop the service and we publish the details about the service in the central repository. When I say the details about the web service, which is the file that holds the details about the web service? Which is the file that holds the details about the web service? Okay, this is a visual file. Okay, I mentioned this in yesterday's sessions. If you see my yesterday video, you would understand that we have talked a lot on about this to give you enough idea what exactly it is. So this is the visual file which is published by the service provider into the central repository. So now this central repository is something like justdial.com or sulekha.com or locanto.com, where the people can come in and can publish their advertisement. So I am advertising about my web service, that I have developed a service which is capable of doing the currency conversion. So I might publish the details whether it is a secured service or it is a like unsecured service, whether we have what are the protocol associated with the service, what are the request and the response format, those all are enclosed within the visual file which is published into the central repository. So the example of central repository might be something like UDDI, okay, which stands for universal description, discovery and agencies. Okay, so this is one of the standard central repository. This is not the only one. We have got multiple. Okay, but this is one of the standard central repository where a service provider can publish the details about the service. When I say it publishes the details about the web service, it means it actually published the visual file. Now the task of service provider is over. He can go ahead and he can work on the different services, and there is a party called a service consumer. Whenever he needs any service, he comes to the central repository, he performs the find operation and tries to find the details of a service as per his requirement. Like me, there might be n number of service providers who have published a similar service in the central repository. The service consumer comes in and tries to find the service as per his requirement. There might be 5 to 6 services which are available as per his requirement given by different vendors. Then what does he do? He tries to shortlist the service based on the service contract. Your service contract is nothing but the visual file which you people have published, which the service provider has published. So he goes through that contract and he tries to figure out which service is more appropriate for him. Once he finds that service, then service consumer tries to talk with the service provider, which is called as bind operation. So first of all, service provider is performing publish operation, where he publishes the details about the web service in the central repository. Then there is a service consumer who comes and performs the find operation where he tries to find the file in the central repository. Now after doing these two tasks, there is something called as bind operation, which happens between the service consumer and the service provider. It's something like, whenever we are looking for some alliance, we publish an ad in a matrimonious website, matrimonious web portal. There may be some other parties who might be also looking for alliance. They go and see over here, they might see 100 of alliances, they might see 100 of options, then they shortlist on the basis of their requirements. And once they shortlist, the task of matrimonious.com is over. Then those two parties start talking to each other directly. So it's something like, let me show you on the screen. Okay, let me switch to the slide which basically clears more about this. Give me a moment. Okay, the changes might take some time. Okay, if we have to talk about SOA, we are not talking about Oracle SOA, we are not talking about the IBM SOA. When we say about SOA, this is how your SOA looks. This is basically the principle of SOA, which says that whenever we have to build or whenever we have to leverage service-oriented architecture, there are three parties involved. There is a service provider, okay, which you can see in the blue. There is a on the right hand side where we develop the service. This is the place where we are developing the service, okay, and we there is a service description which is published. So I told you already, the service description is present in a visual file. In the green oval books you can easily see that there is a service description which is published. I do not deploy the service on the discovery agency. Please do not have that understanding. Discovery agency is not the actual service provider. Discovery agency is an intermediator who helps two parties to meet each other ultimately. So once service is published over here, the task of service provider is over. He can go ahead and try to develop some second service. Meanwhile, there might be some other party which is called a service requester, which is also called as your client. Now he might come very same day, he might come after 6 months, he might come after 2 years. He comes over here and performs find operation on this discovery agency based on his requirement. Once he goes through the service contract of the different service providers, okay, which he has shortlisted based on his requirement, then there is a interact operation which happens between the two parties. There is a bind operation or interact operation which happens between the two parties. So these are the three parties which basically completes your SOA architecture. But now when we talk about the service-based companies, let's say I'm working in Infosys Technologies and there I'm handling the project for Domino's, where I'm trying to integrate the different ERPs or the different systems which Domino's have to basically handle their enterprise. So what might happen over there is discovery agency might not be there into the picture at all. This discovery agency might not be there. We might have only two parties, that is service consumer and service provider. See, we need the discovery agency only in the scenario where we do not know who will be the service consumer. So for example, you start a restaurant, okay, you start a restaurant in a particular area or you start a restaurant in US. So what do? Is you advertise about that restaurant, right? You need to advertise. You might give an advertisement in newspaper, you might give an advertisement in local cable, you might give an advertisement in some, some portals. But let's say you get a contract, for the your college canteen. You get a contract for college canteen, then will you be publishing that ad in the justdial.com or sulekha.com or quicker.com or locanter.com? Will you publish such ads when you are, let's say you have bagged the contract for a college canteen? So will you be publishing any ad in these kind of portals? No. The reason is very clear. Okay, because I know who are my service consumers already, right? I know my service consumer is nothing but the college students. Those are the people who will be basically accessing my services. I need not to publish an ad. Similarly, on a very similar note, when we work in an infrastructure where I know who is my service consumer, who is my service provider, I need not to publish an ad. That's not required. I need not to publish the details of my web service which I have developed in the discovery agency such as UDDI. So when in my experience, whatever I have observed, I have never observed in any of the project implementations we have worked with so far where we have used UDDI. Okay, but yeah, going ahead, if you would love to learn that how to configure UDDI, I'll help you in that. I'll tell you that. But ideally, when we work in this industry, okay, in the service-based companies, we ideally have service consumer and service provider. That's it. We have service consumer, we have service provider. So that's why I told your SOA more or less looks like a client server architecture where there is a client which makes a request to the service provider generates a response corresponding to the request and send back the response to the client. Are you guys following me?
Yes.
Any doubts so far from anyone? Yeah, Rochak, please go ahead with your question. What is your question? Who is using discovery agencies? The service consumer and service provider only will use the discovery agency. You tell me, okay, who uses the justdial.com? Who uses sulekha.com?
Okay. So a normal user, like normal population, they are using as per their demands.
Right. So when I say, let's say justdial.com, let's say I am a dentist, okay, and I want to publish an advertisement about my clinic into some portal. So I am a service provider who publishes that ad. It means I am the service provider is using the discovery agency, point number one. Now again, let's say Rocha comes to a new area where he's not familiar with the things. So he goes to a portal where Sumit had published an ad and Rochak is in need of a dentist. So what does he do is he tries to go through that portal and he tries to find a dentist nearby, and based on his reviews, based on his timings, based on his fees, he might decide whether he has to go for a checkup or not. Right. So the service requester and service provider both leverages this discovery agencies. Okay, but once they find it, let's say once Rochak finds Sumit appropriate, then the role of discovery agency is over. Right. Our meeting is not planned by using the services of justdial.com. We can plan the meeting directly. You can use my contact number, you can have an appointment, and you can come and visit my clinic. I can take care of you, I can do the diagnosis, and I can give you the response. So in that case, justdial.com is no more coming into the picture. So this discovery agency is used by both the parties up till certain extent until they find them. Okay, until they find each other. So now if I have to define SOA, like yesterday I said in a layman language that SOA is basically a solution which makes two or more systems to talk to each other. Okay, that's fine. But now to give more appropriate definition, okay, just let me switch to our notepad which we have been using. Oh my god. Okay, so this was the notepad we have been using. So I will say SOA is an architectural style. Okay, it is an architectural style of building business applications. Okay, so we might need to develop some customized applications, okay, using this basically SOA. So I might need to integrate multiple applications and I need to fetch the data from multiple applications, multiple standard applications which my enterprise uses, and I need to come up with some custom application. Okay, when I need to develop this custom application, it means I need to integrate the data from these different applications. Okay, when I need to integrate the data from these different applications, I would definitely need SOA layer. So SOA is an architecture style of building business applications using loosely coupled services. Okay, what do we mean by loosely coupled? Loosely coupled means that these are interdependent. Oh, sorry, these are independent, not interdependent. I'm extremely sorry. These are independent of each other. The services which we develop should be such that they are complete within themselves and they can be used at any place we want. So let's say I developed one service which is capable of sending the notification. So my web service has got a functionality. You send the user phone number, you send the user email ID, and you send the message, and my service will generate the text message, and the email will be showed to the desired person. Okay, so this is a service which can be reused multiple times. Let's say Flipkart needs this notification service to send the notifications to the people who are placing the orders at their portal. They can leverage it. Similarly, eBay might also need it. Similarly, let's say n number of e-commerce portal owners might need this service, so they can use the same service multiple times. So SOA is an architecture style of building business applications using loosely coupled services which act as a black boxes. So when I say black boxes, so one web service do not know about any other web service, okay, but these individually are complete within themselves, which act as a black boxes, and these can be orchestrated together. These can be orchestrated together to achieve some business functionality. some complex business functionality. And who does this orchestration? Who does the task of orchestration, which means combining discrete set of services into single unit? When I talk about Oracle SOA specifically, who is taking care of doing the orchestration? Which is the component we have that does the orchestration? Anybody can tell me that? Okay, Beeple is the component which does that. So that's true. So now what happens is, I'll give you one example. When I say, this services should be complete within itself, and this services should be so flexible. Okay, it should add so flexibility to my architecture that in whatever order I want to use them, I should be able to do that. For example, let's say there is a portal. Okay, that portal, what does it do is, it allows any customer to come into portal. The customer can basically select certain items. They can put those into the cart. So let's say my business requirement says that the order amount must be $1,000. Then only I will be going to give you the delivery of the products you are selecting. I do not work for any order which is less than $1,000. Okay, it's just an assumption. I'm running a portal which says the minimum order amount for which you have to place an order is $1,000. So let's say what happens over here is, first order is validated. So let's say I have developed a web service which does the order validation. Okay, so what goes here is, order details goes as an input and I get an output which is order validation. Okay, order validation response, which might be success or failure. Now based on this, if let's say order is validated successfully, then we get an option to make an online payment where we need credit card validation. Now there might be a service which does this. This is a separate service. Order details validation is a separate service. Credit card validation is a separate service. Both are independent of each other. Both are loosely coupled, but these have been used in an order to basically achieve some business functionality. In order to design my business processes, I have been using these two services into one sequence so that I can achieve my business functionality. Please understand, the services are always independent, but when these are combined in certain order to achieve some business functionality, you might feel that these are dependent on each other. These are dependent on each other only to execute that business flow. But if you talk about their individual functionality, these services can do them without, like let's say credit card validation can be done without the order validation also. Credit card validation would not need anything from the order details. It would just need the card number, CVV and expiry details, and it does the validation. But I am arranging them in a specific order. I am trying to create some business process. I am trying to use them in a specific order to basically achieve my business functionality. Now when I say these should be flexible enough, it would mean that let's say now I feel there are a lot of unnecessary traffic which I'm getting on my portal. The number of orders are very less than the number of portals or the number of persons who are visiting my portal. Let's say there are lakhs of customers who are coming to my portal, but I am only getting 5 to 10 orders in a day. So I find that this is like unnecessary, building a lot of traffic. So what I do is, first I try to change my business flow. I say first I will do the credit card validation. And I want only those people who are owning a valid credit card should be able to log in into my protocol, or should be able to basically explore my protocol and can place the order. And then I want to do the order validation. So now since these two services are completely loosely coupled, these are independent of each other, these basically resides separately, I can change this order with very few changes or with no changes at all, and my architecture can be redesigned. So this concept of web services basically gives a lot of agility to your solution. I'll give you one more example. So let's say you're working in a restaurant. So what happens is, restaurant is a business. Okay, so any business we talk about would have some business flow. Okay, would have some logic, the way they do the business or the way they execute the business flow. So they first design the business flow, and in order to design their business flow, they might leverage different services. For example, in a restaurant, what happens is, let's say there is a uh, waiter service, there is a kitchen service, and there is a billing service. Let's say these are the three services. Now when you visit different stores or different restaurants, you might observe these are used in different order. For example, when you go to Domino's or Pizza Hut or let's say Subway, so first you go to the executive who is standing on the store, who is there on the store, you place your orders, you have to make the payment first, right? You have to make the payment first, you go to the billing section first, then your order is passed to the kitchen, and then a waiter, or there might be a self-service, then the order is served. This is how it happens. Now please understand, these three services are complete within themselves. These are the individual services. I can use them in any order. Now let's say Domino's is thinking to redesign their business at all. So they want to redesign the user experience completely. And even those people who have gone in a Pizza Hut, okay, though they are both doing a similar kind of business, might observe the flow of execution is little different in the Pizza Hut, or maybe Domino's is also trying to follow that protocol. They feel that I can gain more customers if I follow that flow of execution. So what happens in the Pizza Hut is, first you go and get seated, then there is a waiter service which comes and takes your order. That order is passed to billing service as well as kitchen service, so that both billing service can have an entry of that order, and then a kitchen service should also have that entry so that they can start preparing that order, and that order is again passed to the waiter service. So the point I am trying to explain you is that ultimately these are the services which are doing the task. Okay, so but we can use this in different orders to achieve different business functionalities, or to achieve different flow of executions, and these can be arranged in any order. These can be worked in any order. Okay, so I need not to make modification in any service. Whatever may be the order, whatever may be the flow of execution, I need not to change the order. I need not to make any change in these services. The services are complete within itself. These services are just saying that you give me the kitchen service means I'll do this task. Waiter service means I'll do this task. Billing services this task. Now it is how we design the business flow. Depending on how we design the business flow, these different services will come into the action. But the nature of these services is such that these are complete within themselves. These can be used in any order. So such is the flexibility when we use the concept of SOA, when we use the concept of web services in this SOA architecture to achieve the required business functionality. Are you guys following me? Because up till here, those who have attended yesterday's and today's session, because this is my session number 2, should get a fair idea what exactly SOA is doing, what is the advantage by having SOA into the basically our architecture, how it brings agility. Okay, how is it implemented, with the help of web services, what exactly that web service is. It is a software function. How do we get to know the details about the web service? What are the different parties which are involved in the SOA architecture? Okay, what are messages, what are services? Okay, how do these services communicate with each other? What is people? Okay, what is the role of the people? So who introduced the people? So you must be in a position to answer all these questions. Now if you have any doubts, we can talk on those. So this basically completes my first session, which basically we plan on the basic stuff. Then we start talking about the XML, because XML is a prerequisite to learn your Oracle SOA suite specifically, because these are based on some open standards which are mostly on XML. So apart from XML, you might come across XSD, you might come across Visual, you might come across XPath, you might come across XSLT. So all these things are the open standards or the XML based standards which will be leveraged in your Oracle SOA suite. So first we'll give you a fair idea about all this. There is something called as namespaces, about which most of the people always remain confused. So we'll have a lot of discussion on all these topics, and then we will get started with the hands-on part. Also, I have shared the installation guide yesterday. Okay, that might have been received by Shiva and Vipul. I shared with Sridhar also. So other people can contact Sridhar to do the install. So that is basically a guide which helps you to do the installation. That is a self-explanatory guide which gives you the complete description about the installation part. So if you get time in parallel, you can start the session, or you can start the installation part. Okay, but I will be discussing the steps of the installation, the significance of those steps. I'll not be showing the installation, but yeah, if anybody gets stuck, you can drop me an email. I will connect with you guys offline, one-to-one, and will help you in resolving those issues and will help you in setting the infrastructure. Okay, it's always better to have the infrastructure within your local machine, because different people provide some access to some VM where you can log in and you can do the practice, but they do it for 1 month or so. So you become dependent on their machines, and once they revoke those rights, you are again something like homeless. So better thing is you have the infrastructure in your local machine. Whenever you feel like, you can just plug in and get started. So that's always good. And as a SOA developer, definitely you must know that how to do the installation. Okay, what are the different steps, what are the basically importance of those steps. So if you get some time, go through those. Today we'll restrict here only. Tomorrow, I would request everyone to join at the correct time. Okay, please try 5 minutes in prior if it is possible for you, because we lose a lot of time in contacting the people. Are you joining, are you not joining? So which